Today's sponsor is Jennifer Raynor Photography, focusing on life's precious moments. Today I want to welcome Jeremy Johnston, the curator of the Buffalo Bill Museum and Western American History at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West in Wyoming. Jeremy is in town this weekend to give a couple lectures at the Chautauqua Institute this Friday and Saturday for the Cody Family Reunion. So it's a little quite wordy there. So thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me here, Paul.
For anyone who doesn't know who you are, what is your job and what are some of your duties at the center?
I am currently the curator of the Buffalo Bill Museum, which is one of 5 museums of the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. The Buffalo Bill Center of the West is located in Cody, Wyoming, which is a small community, nearly 10,000 residents. But we have a museum there that houses 7 acres of display space.
Wow.
So it's quite an extensive museum, quite an extensive center. In addition to the Buffalo Bill Museum, we have the Plains Indian Museum, the Whitney Gallery of Western Art, the Cody Firearms Museum, the Draper Museum of Natural History, and we also have quite an extensive library and archival collection through the McCracken Research Library.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
quite a center.
I mean, what's it like having 5 museums in one area?
Our greatest challenge is quite a few people do not know we really exist. And so a lot of people will be traveling to Yellowstone National Park. And if they're fortunate enough to go through the east entrance of Yellowstone, they often travel through Cody, Wyoming, and they're amazed to find such a massive center located in this small community, small Wyoming community. But for me, someone who's been interested in the West all his life, it's just a pleasure to work there and see some of the great material that comes through. For example, we have Audie Murphy's pistol is currently on display. We've had various artwork go through the Whitney Gallery, some quite extensive collections of Frederick Remington's artwork, Charlie Russell's artwork. Mm-hmm. The Draper Museum is just a wonderful overview of the Yellowstone ecosystem. And the Buffalo Bill Museum is, my apologies to the competitors out there, but it is the best museum detailing the life and legacy of Buffalo Bill.
Right. What got you interested in history and definitely specifically Buffalo Bill history?
I was very fortunate to grow up in Powell, Wyoming, which is 20 miles east of Cody, Wyoming. And this region is where my family homesteaded in the late 1890s, early 1900s. And like I said, very fortunate to grow up around all my grandparents, my great-grandparents. I heard all sorts of stories about the old days in the Cody, Powell, Wyoming region. I can still recall my great-grandmother Johnston telling me about her trip from Nebraska to the Bighorn Basin to Cody, Wyoming. When she was a little girl, she walked from Chadron, Nebraska to Cody, Wyoming behind the wagon. This was in the late 1890s. So I'm very proud of my family's heritage in the area. And for me, I found history to be a wonderful lesson in how things are shaped and how it reflects the present day. So when I would ask that question that all children constantly ask, why, oftentimes I would be given a history lesson and I would learn how that process or that event emerged. It gives me a better sense of why we do what we do in that area. So I was very fortunate to grow up in that region along with my family and hear all these stories about my ancestors. Buffalo Bill in particular, one of my ancestors, John B. Goff, that's Goff, was a hunting guide for Theodore Roosevelt in Colorado. And in 1906, he migrated from Colorado to Yellowstone National Park to serve as a game warden. And then he left Yellowstone and went towards Cody, Wyoming, where he started working for Buffalo Bill Cody.
Okay.
So the family's been working for Buffalo Bill Cody since the early 1900s. As you can see, we're still plugging away at it.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Your 2 lectures tomorrow and Saturday. What are those going to be?
My first lecture is entitled Go East, Young Man, and it looks at the influence of the American West on the urban environment here in the United States. I've always been fascinated in the contributions of the American West to the nation. And there's some threads there that I find really interesting that I think a lot of people who live in urban areas don't quite understand or appreciate. I mean, for example, the state of Wyoming, its population is only 500,000 people, but the state is the third largest producer of coal in the world. And it may be cold in Wyoming, but I can assure you we're not using all of that coal in the state of Wyoming. All of it is being shipped out of the state. So that makes a significant contribution to the rest of the country in producing electricity, powering factories. And again, Wyoming has always been a vast storehouse of natural minerals resources that benefit the entire country. And there's other things as well, cultural contributions, societal contributions. And what I'll be talking about tomorrow is how these contributions really shaped urban America. On Saturday, I'll be talking about the relationship between Theodore Roosevelt and Buffalo Bill Cody, two individuals that I've always been very interested in. And for years, a lot of people have assumed the two were quite close. There was a partnership there, and the two men worked closely together to develop the American West. Unfortunately, my research has demonstrated that they didn't quite get along all that well. But both men were astute enough to realize they couldn't really criticize the other publicly, as it would tarnish their own reputation, their own public image. So anyway, I'll be looking at that complex relationship, and we'll talk about whether or not Cody and Theodore Roosevelt were actually friends or enemies. So
or somewhere
in between. Yeah.
Like a lot of relationships end up.
Yes. Yeah. As with any historical event or historical figures, it's usually more complex than people believe.
And it's more interesting than it could be fictionally written.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
So there's a lot of stuff. There's going to be a parade. There's tours at the Lucille Ball Museum. There's crazy stuff. Dinners, receptions. What else? There's stuff at the Reg for the Buffalo Bill poster.
And the train station is hosting an exhibition. There'll be an exhibition entitled Scots in the American West, which is a series of panels talking about the contribution of Scottish immigrants in the American West.
Antique buggies and all the
a lot of posters from our collections will be on display at the train station.
Are you going to be able to make it to a?
Oh yes. Yeah, I plan to see as much as Jamestown as I possibly can. So I'm very excited to see the Buffalo Bill poster you have in the theater down the street, which in my opinion is the rarest Buffalo Bill poster in existence.
Really?
And I've always loved Lucy, so I'm going to go to the Lucy Museum.
That's good. Well, I guess that's kind of covers everything. Everyone check out centerofthewest.org for more information on Jeremy and what they do at the center. Maybe plan a trip out to the museums. Check out cody-family.org for information on the events going on this weekend. And maybe we'll see you there. Thank you very much. It's mighty fine water.